The billionaire CEO hires an autistic intern and falls in love with her after discovering her hidden talent. What if the one person everyone overlooked turned out to be the most brilliant mind in the room? We live in a world where people are often judged by their ability to fit in. But what if someone's greatest strength was in the very thing that made them different? Welcome back to the channel, my beautiful story family. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to tell you something important. Making these stories is a labor of love for us. We put hours into crafting something meaningful and valuable, stories that, hopefully, leave a message about love, hope, and kindness. One of the things I love most is hearing how our stories resonate with so many of you around the world. So, please drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see the diversity of our growing, supportive community. Today's story is about a billionaire CEO, Richard, who never imagined that hiring an autistic intern would change his life forever. Sophia Reeves, a young autistic woman, struggled to find a workplace that understood her. But when Richard hired her, something unexpected happened. He discovered that her mind worked in ways no one else's did. Her hidden talent would not only transform his company, but also his heart. But this journey wasn't easy. Challenges, betrayals, misunderstandings, and a world that refused to believe in her stood in their way. Would Richard fight for her when the world turned against them? Stay with me till the end, because this story is one you don't want to miss. Let's begin. Richard Blackwood leaned back in his leather chair, the sprawling city skyline stretching out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. At 35, he'd built Blackwood Innovations into a titan of industry, a name whispered in awe across boardrooms and tech conventions. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes made him a fixture on magazine covers, but it was his relentless drive that kept the company on the cutting edge. Lately, though, that edge felt dulled. The Quantum Leap project, his bold vision to revolutionize energy storage, had hit snag after snag. Deadlines slipped, prototypes failed, and his team of so-called geniuses churned out excuses instead of results. He rubbed his temples, the weight of expectation pressing down like a storm cloud. Downstairs, in a sterile conference room, the hiring team sifted through a stack of resumes for the latest internship opening. The air buzzed with the quiet hum of deliberation, papers rustling as they debated the final candidate. Sophia Reeves, 24, a data analysis prodigy by her own account, with a transcript that gleamed like polished steel, straight A's, glowing references from professors who called her exceptional and unconventional. But there was a catch. Her interview notes were a mess of red flags. Socially awkward, struggles with eye contact, disclosed autism diagnosis. The team hesitated, their voices low but firm. "She's brilliant on paper," said Claire, the HR lead, tapping a pen against the table. "But we need someone who can handle the pressure, communicate with the team. This isn't a solo gig." Mark, the project manager, nodded. "We're already behind. We can't afford a liability." The folder sat there, Sophia's name staring up at them, when Richard's assistant buzzed in over the intercom. "Mr. Blackwood wants the final pick on his desk by noon. No exceptions." The clock read 11:45. Claire sighed, shoving the folder aside, but something caught her eye. Sophia's cover letter. It wasn't the usual polished fluff. Instead, it was a raw, almost chaotic breakdown of a failed algorithm from one of Blackwood's older projects, pinpointing a flaw no one had caught. Claire frowned, flipping the page over. There was more. A hand-drawn chart, jagged lines connecting dots no one else had seen. She slid it back into the pile, but not before Mark noticed. "What's that?" he asked, leaning over. "Nothing," Claire muttered. "Just odd." Upstairs, Richard paced his office, the quantum leap schematics glowing on his desk screen. Another test had tanked that morning, overheating circuits, data corruption. He needed a breakthrough, not another round of corporate platitudes. When Claire knocked and dropped the candidate files on his desk, he barely glanced at them. "Who's it gonna be?" he asked, voice clipped. "We've got a solid pick from Stanford," she said, handing over a pristine resume. "Team player, great references." Richard skimmed it, unimpressed. "Same as the last three who couldn't hack it." "Next." Claire hesitated, then slid Sophia's folder forward. "This one's different. She's not a fit, probably. Autism, social challenges. But her application, autism," Richard cut in, eyebrow arching. He snatched the folder, flipping it open. The cover letter hit him like a jolt, messy, brilliant, alive with insight. He traced the chart with his finger, the flaw in the old algorithm glaring back at him. "She saw this?" "Yeah," Claire said, shifting uncomfortably. "But the team's worried she'll crack under pressure." Richard didn't answer right away. He stared at the page, mind racing. Different could be a disaster, or it could be exactly what he needed. "Trial basis," he said finally, tossing the folder back. 1 month. If she sinks, she's out. 2 days later, Sophia Reeves stood in the lobby of Blackwood Innovations, her fingers twisting the strap of her worn backpack. The glass walls and gleaming marble made her feel small, exposed. She'd spent the night rehearsing what to say, but the words felt jumbled now, slipping away under the weight of the moment. A security guard waved her toward the elevator, and she stepped in, heart pounding. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, Richard was waiting. He sized her up, slight frame, dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail, eyes darting everywhere but his face. "Sophia Reeves?" he asked, voice carrying an edge of curiosity. "Yes," she said, barely audible. She forced her gaze up, meeting his for a split second before dropping it again. I don't do well in social situations, but I see patterns where others don't." Richard tilted his head, intrigued. "Patterns?" "Yes." She shifted her weight, words tumbling out faster now. "In numbers, behaviors, systems, things people overlook. I can't explain it well, but I see them. Always." He studied her, the gears in his mind turning. "Show me," he said, gesturing toward a conference room. Inside, he pulled up a screen of scrambled data from the latest quantum leap failure. Numbers, graphs, error logs. "Tell me what you see." Sophia hesitated, then stepped forward, her fingers brushing the edge of the table as she leaned in. The chaos on the screen didn't faze her. She squinted, head tilting slightly, and then her voice steadied. "There's a loop here," she said, pointing. "The system's overcompensating for a voltage spike. It doesn't need to. It's throwing everything off." Richard crossed his arms, watching her closely. "How do you know?" "It's loud," she said, almost to herself. "The numbers. They don't line up right. They're fighting." He didn't fully grasp what she meant, but the specificity in her tone hooked him. "Fix it," he said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Now." She took it, hands trembling slightly, and started tapping away. Minutes stretched into a tense silence, broken only by the soft clicks of the screen. Richard watched, his impatience warring with a flicker of hope. When she handed it back, the revised code stared up at him, clean, precise, daring. He ran a quick simulation on his laptop, and the error log shrank, the system stabilizing for the first time in weeks. "Huh," he said, leaning back. "You're hired. 1 month. Don't screw it up." Sophia nodded, a faint flush creeping up her neck. "I won't." The next few weeks flew by in a blur of late nights and quiet breakthroughs. Sophia settled into a corner desk, her space a fortress of notebooks and scribbled charts. She didn't mingle, didn't chat by the coffee machine, but her work spoke volumes. Richard found himself drawn to her progress reports, each one a puzzle piece slotting into place, nudging Quantum Leap closer to reality. The team grumbled at first, whispering about her odd habits, her blunt replies, but the results shut them up. One evening, as the office emptied out, Richard lingered, watching Sophia from across the room. She was hunched over her desk, headphones on, lost in a sea of data. He approached, tapping the edge of her chair. She jolted, yanking the headphones off. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said, hands in his pockets. "You're still here." "So are you," she replied, eyes flicking to his, then away. "Fair." He nodded at her screen. "What's got you this time?" She hesitated, then turned the monitor toward him. "The cooling system, it's off. Not wrong, just off. I think it's hiding something." "Hiding?" He leaned in, close enough to catch the faint scent of her lavender shampoo. "Explain." "It's too perfect," she said, voice low but firm. "The numbers look right, but they're too smooth, like someone made them fit." Richard frowned, the implications sinking in. Tampering? A glitch? He couldn't tell yet, but her certainty gnawed at him. "Dig deeper," he said. "I want answers by tomorrow." She nodded, already turning back to her work, but he didn't move. For the first time, he saw her not just as a hire, but as something else, someone who could see what he couldn't. And that thought lingered, dangerous and electric, as he walked away. The next morning, Sophia dropped a file on his desk, her expression tight. "It's not a mistake," she said. "Someone's covering something up. I don't know who, but it's there." Richard stared at the evidence, altered logs, buried data trails, and felt a chill crawl up his spine. The project was his lifeline, and now it was teetering on the edge of a cliff he hadn't seen coming. "Who else knows?" he asked. "No one," she said. "Just you." He met her gaze, and for a moment the room shrank to just the two of them, her quiet intensity, his growing unease. "Keep it that way," he said. "We're in this together now." She nodded, and as he watched her walk back to her desk, a question burned in his mind. What else was hiding in the shadows of his empire, and how far would this strange, brilliant intern take him to find out? Do you believe intelligence is more important than social skills? Share your thoughts in the comments. Richard sat behind his desk, the glow of his laptop casting sharp angles across his face. The files Sophia had dropped off that morning lay open, its pages a maze of numbers and annotations that pointed to something unsettling. Someone had buried a flaw deep in the quantum leap data, and she'd caught it. He rubbed his jaw, the weight of her discovery settling in. The office beyond his glass walls was quiet now, the late hour stripping it down to a skeleton crew. But Sophia was still out there, hunched over her desk, chasing threads he couldn't even see yet. He stood, drawn to her focus like a moth to a flame, and stepped into the open floor. Her corner was a fortress of controlled chaos, papers stacked in precise piles, a second monitor flickering with code, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She didn't notice him until he was close enough to see the faint crease between her brows, the tension she carried like a second skin. "You're still here," he said, voice low. She glanced up, startled, then back at her screen. "So are you." "Touché." He nodded at the monitor. "What's keeping you now?" Sophia hesitated, her hands pausing. "The cooling system data. It's not just off. It's a lie. Someone's fudging the inputs to hide a bigger problem." She tapped a key, pulling up a graph that spiked in jagged, unnatural peaks. "See? It's too clean. Real data doesn't look like this." Richard leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers for a fleeting second. "You're saying it's deliberate?" "Yes." Her voice was steady, but her fingers twitched against the desk. "I don't know why yet. But it's there." He straightened, mind racing. "Keep digging. I need to know who's behind this." She nodded, already turning back to her work, but he lingered, watching her. She was a puzzle, brilliant, fragile, fearless in her own quiet way, and she was shaking up everything he thought he knew about his company. The next morning, the office buzzed with a different energy. Sophia's discovery had sparked a fire under the Quantum Leap team, but it also exposed cracks. Richard called a meeting, the conference room packed with engineers, analysts, and a handful of skeptical managers. Sophia sat near the back, her chair angled slightly away from the group, her laptop a shield. Richard stood at the front, projecting her findings onto the screen. "We've got a problem," he said, his tone cutting through the murmurs. "Someone's been masking a flaw in the system. Sophia caught it. We fix it now or we're dead in the water." Mark, the project manager, shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. "How do we know she's right? No offense, but she's been here, what, 3 weeks?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "Because I ran the numbers myself. She's not guessing. She's seeing." Sophia spoke up, her voice soft but firm. "It's in the logs. The data's been smoothed out to hide overheating spikes. If you'd let it run, the whole system would have fried." The room went quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. Claire, sitting beside Mark, scribbled something on her notepad, her lips pressed into a thin line. Richard watched the team's reactions. Some nodded, impressed. Others exchanged glances, unease flickering in their eyes. "Get on it," he said, dismissing them. "Sophia's taking lead on this." As the group filed out, Sophia stayed behind, gathering her things with deliberate care. Richard approached, hands in his pockets. "You just saved us a lot of trouble." She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. It was obvious. "Not to the entire team of experts who worked on it for 6 months," he said, a hint of awe creeping into his voice. "How did you see that?" "It's just there," she said, finally looking up, "like a noise no one else hears." He studied her, caught off guard by the simplicity of it. She wasn't boasting, she was stating a fact, one that made him question everything about his so-called dream team. "Keep that noise in your head," he said. "We need it." The weeks that followed were a grind. Sophia threw herself into the Quantum Leap overhaul, her desk a constant hum of activity. But the office wasn't kind to her. The open floor plan assaulted her senses, phones ringing, voices overlapping, the relentless clatter of keyboards. She kept her headphones on, a flimsy barrier against the chaos. But it wasn't enough. Lunch breaks were worse. She'd sit alone in the break room, picking at her food while others laughed and traded stories she couldn't join. Whispers trailed her, about her silence, her odd habits, the way she'd flinch if someone got too close. One afternoon, she overheard Mark and Claire by the coffee machine. "She's a machine, not a person," Mark muttered, stirring his drink. "Thinks she's better than us." Claire sighed. "She's smart, I'll give her that. But she's stepping on toes. Richard's obsessed with her." Sophia froze, her stomach twisting. She slipped back to her desk, the words looping in her mind. She didn't want to be noticed. She wanted to work, to fix things. But the more she fixed, the more she felt the walls closing in. Then came the breakthrough. Late one night, alone in the office, Sophia tackled the company's AI system, a secondary project tied to Quantum Leap. It had been glitchy, costing millions in lost efficiency. She dug into the code, her focus razor-sharp, and found it. A logic error so subtle it had slipped past every audit. She rewrote the sequence, tested it, and watched the system purr to life. Flawless. By morning, she'd saved Blackwood Innovations a fortune. Richard found her at her desk, bleary-eyed but triumphant, the updated AI humming on her screen. "What's this?" he asked, peering over her shoulder. "Fixed it," she said, voice flat with exhaustion. The AI, it was choking on bad logic. Now it's not. He ran the diagnostics himself, disbelief giving way to a slow grin. This was losing us millions. How did you see that? It was obvious, she said, shrugging again. Not to me, he countered, leaning closer. Not to anyone. You're something else, Sophia. She ducked her head, uncomfortable with the praise, but Richard didn't back off. He saw it now. Her gift wasn't just skill, it was vision. And it was pulling him in, deeper than he'd expected. Word spread fast. The team marveled at the AI fix, but not everyone was happy. Mark slammed his coffee cup down in a meeting the next day, his voice sharp. She's an intern. How's she outpacing us? She's not outpacing, Richard shot back. She's outthinking. Claire stayed quiet, but her eyes lingered on Sophia, cold and calculating. The tension grew, a quiet storm building beneath the surface. Sophia felt it, the sideways glances, the clipped tones. But she pushed it aside, burying herself in her work. Then, one morning, it happened. She logged into her system and found her latest Quantum Leap files corrupted, hours of progress gone, replaced with garbled code. She stared at the screen, heart racing, hands shaking as she tried to salvage what she could. Nothing. It was deliberate, precise, a knife in the back. She stood, scanning the office, but no one met her gaze. Richard appeared at her side, drawn by the tension in her posture. What's wrong? Someone trashed my work, she said, voice trembling with rare anger. It's gone. He stared at the screen, his expression hardening. Who? I don't know. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to shut down. But they knew exactly what to hit. Richard's jaw tightened, a flicker of fury in his eyes. He turned, surveying the room, the team oblivious or pretending to be. Someone was playing a game, and Sophia was the target. He looked back at her, her quiet strength cracking under the weight, and felt something shift inside him. Anger. Yes, but something more, something he couldn't name yet. We'll find them, he said, voice low and fierce, and they'll regret it. But as he walked away, a question gnawed at him. Who in his empire would dare cross him, and what did they know about Sophia that he didn't? The office buzzed with its usual chaos, but for Sophia it was a battlefield. The clatter of keyboards, the overlapping voices, the sharp ring of a phone down the hall. It crashed against her like waves she couldn't escape. She sat rigid at her desk, headphones dangling uselessly around her neck, her hands pressed tight against her ears. The sabotage from the day before still burned in her chest, a raw wound that made every sound sharper, every glance heavier. She'd rebuilt most of the corrupted Quantum Leap files overnight, but the cost was steep. Exhaustion clung to her like damp cloth, and the office felt like it was closing in. Richard watched her from across the room, his morning coffee cooling in his hand. He'd been tracking her since the incident, noting the way she shrank into herself, the way her fingers twitched against her desk. The team moved around her, oblivious or indifferent, but he saw it, the strain, the quiet panic. Mark brushed past, muttering something about deadlines, and Sophia flinched, her breath catching. Richard set his cup down, decision made, and crossed the floor. "Sophia," he said, keeping his voice low. She didn't look up, her eyes fixed on the screen, but he saw the tension in her shoulders. "You okay?" She shook her head, a small, jerky motion. "It's loud, too loud." He glanced around, the office humming with its relentless energy, and back at her. "Come with me." She hesitated, then stood, clutching her laptop like a lifeline. He led her through the maze of desks, past curious stairs, and into the elevator. The doors closed, muffling the noise, and she exhaled, a shaky sound that tugged at him. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "My office," he said. "It's quieter." The ride up was silent, but he watched her, her hands unclenching, her breathing steadying. When they stepped into his corner office, the city sprawled out beyond the glass, muted and distant. He gestured to a chair by the window. Sit. Take a minute. She did, sinking into it, her laptop resting on her knees. Thanks, she mumbled, staring at the floor. I don't usually fall apart like that. You didn't, he said, leaning against his desk. You're still here, that's more than most could handle. She glanced up, surprised, then away again. I'm not good with people. They don't get me. They don't have to, he replied, crossing his arms. I do. Her eyes flicked back to him, searching, and something unspoken passed between them, a thread of trust, fragile but real. He didn't push, just let the quiet settle, and for the first time Sophia felt the edges of her world soften. Days turned into weeks, and Richard found himself gravitating toward her. Meetings shifted, less about the team, more about her input. He'd call her into his office, not just for quantum leap updates, but to hear her dissect problems, her mind a labyrinth he couldn't stop exploring. One afternoon, he handed her a tablet loaded with AI diagnostics. Tell me what's wrong with this, he said, leaning back in his chair. She scanned it, her brow furrowing. The prediction model's off. It's weighting old data too heavily. Garbage in, garbage out. He grinned, a rare flash of warmth. You make it sound so simple. It is, she said, handing it back. You just have to listen to what it's saying. He took the tablet, his fingers brushing hers, and paused. I'm starting to think you hear things I never will. She ducked her head, a faint flush creeping up her neck, but didn't pull away. The moment lingered, charged with something neither could name. The team noticed. Mark cornered Richard in the hallway one morning, his voice sharp. She's an intern, not your golden child. The rest of us are busting our asses and she gets a free pass. Richard's gaze turned cold. She's not getting a pass. She's carrying us. You want to prove me wrong? Step up. Mark bristled but backed off, his resentment simmering. Claire watched from her desk, her expression unreadable, but the air grew thick with unease. Sophia felt it too, the whispers, the tension. But with Richard it was different. He didn't demand small talk or fake smiles. He asked questions, listened, made space for her to breathe. She didn't know what to call it, but it felt like safety. Then came the breaking point. A Friday presentation loomed, the quantum leap prototype ready for its first full demo. The conference room swelled with execs, investors, the hum of anticipation electric. Sophia stood at the back, her notes clutched tight, her role simple. Monitor the data live, flag any issues. But as the screens lit up and the system roared to life, the noise hit her like a freight train. Voices, footsteps, the whir of machinery. Her vision blurred, her chest tightened, and she stumbled back, hands clawing at her ears. Too much noise, too many people. I can't. Her voice cracked, panicked, as she sank against the wall. Richard saw it from the front, mid-sentence with an investor, and broke off. Excuse me, he muttered, pushing through the crowd. He reached her, kneeling to her level, his hands hovering but not touching. Sophia, look at me. Focus on my voice. She shook her head, eyes squeezed shut. It's everywhere. Just me, he said, softer now, steady. Hear me. In and out, slow. You're okay. He kept talking, his tone a lifeline, until her breathing matched his rhythm. The room faded, their bubble shrinking to just them. Come on, he said, standing. Let's get out of here. He guided her through the chaos, shielding her from the stairs and into his office. The door clicked shut, the silence wrapping around them like a blanket. She sank onto the couch, trembling, and he sat across from her, giving her space. Better? He asked. Yeah, she whispered, rubbing her arms. Sorry, I ruined it. You didn't ruin anything, he said, leaning forward. The demo's fine. You caught a glitch before it tanked us. Again? She blinked, processing. I did. Yeah. He smiled, faint but genuine. You're unstoppable. even when you don't know it. She met his gaze, longer this time, and something shifted. Gratitude, trust, a spark she couldn't place. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Help me." "I wanted to," he replied, voice low. "You're not alone in this, Sophia." The words hung there, heavy with meaning. She nodded, a small gesture, but it felt like a door cracking open. Outside, the demo rolled on, the team oblivious to the quiet revolution unfolding behind the glass. Richard watched her, his fascination deepening, a pull he couldn't shake. She was changing him, his company, his world, and he wasn't sure where it would lead. But as her breathing steadied and her guard lowered, one thing was clear. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The days after the demo blurred into a rhythm of late nights and quiet moments. Richard's office became Sophia's sanctuary, a refuge from the storm of the open floor. He'd sit across from her, poring over quantum leap updates, asking questions that drew her out of her shell. "What do you see here?" he'd say, sliding a tablet her way, and she'd light up, her voice steady as she broke down complexities into truths he marveled at. He defended her at every turn. When Mark grumbled about her special treatment, Richard shut it down with a curt, "She's earning it." "Are you?" When Claire questioned her pace, he countered, "She's ahead of us." "Catch up." Sophia noticed, and though she didn't say it, his faith carved out a space where she could breathe. One evening, as rain streaked the windows, they lingered over a stack of AI logs. Richard watched her scribble notes, her focus a quiet intensity that pulled him in. "You ever get tired of this?" he asked, half teasing. She glanced up, a rare half-smile tugging at her lips. It's home. The numbers don't lie to me." He leaned back, struck by her words. "Wish I could say the same about people." Her smile faded, but her eyes held his, a flicker of understanding passing between them. The air shifted, charged with something unspoken, and for a moment, the world outside dissolved. Then came the overload. It hit during a packed strategy session, execs, engineers, a dozen voices clashing over timelines. Sophia stood at the edge, monitoring live feeds, when the noise surged, chairs scraping, shouts overlapping, a printer whirring in the corner. Her hands flew to her ears, her chest heaving. "Too much noise, too many people. I can't," she gasped, stumbling back. Richard was there in an instant, cutting through the crowd. "Look at me," he said, voice soft but firm. "Focus on my voice." She tried, her eyes wild, but the chaos drowned him out. He took her arm gently, guiding her past gaping stairs to his office. The door shut, and she collapsed onto the couch, trembling. He knelt beside her, keeping his distance. In and out, slow. "Just me." She nodded, clutching her knees, and followed his cadence until the panic ebbed. "Thanks," she whispered, voice raw. "You didn't have to." "I did," he cut in, softer than he meant. "You're not alone here." She looked at him, really looked, and something clicked. Trust, fragile but growing. He stayed until she steadied, the connection between them tightening like a knot neither could undo. But the peace didn't last. Daniel Pierce, Blackwood Innovations, COO, watched Sophia's rise with a tightening grip on his own power. At 42, he'd clawed his way up, his polished suits and sharp tongue masking a ruthless edge. Her fixes, Quantum Leap, the AI, made her a threat, a spotlight stealing his thunder. Late one night, he sat in his office, a bottle of scotch at his elbow, tweaking data logs. He buried a fabricated error in the latest prototype stats, pinning it on Sophia's access codes. By morning, the trap was set. The fallout hit fast. Richard stared at the report on his desk. System crashes, millions in projected losses, all traced to Sophia's work. Daniel stood beside him, voice smooth. "She's brilliant, sure, but reckless. This is what happens when you let an intern run wild. Richard's gut twisted. This doesn't add up. She's meticulous. Numbers don't lie, Daniel said, sliding the evidence forward. She's out of her depth. The team gathered, tension thick as Richard faced them. Sophia stood at her desk, oblivious, until he called her in. "We've got a problem," he said, handing her the report. "This came from your files." She scanned it, her face paling. "This isn't mine. I didn't—" "It's your login," he said, voice strained. "I need to sort this out. You're suspended until I do." Her eyes widened, hurt flashing raw. "I thought you believed in me." "I do," he said, the words heavy with pain. "But I need time to fix this." She stepped back, hands trembling. "I don't belong here," she muttered, grabbing her bag. He reached for her, but she was already gone, the door slamming shut behind her. Hours later, Richard sat alone, replaying her words. The office felt empty without her quiet presence. He pulled up the data himself, digging into the logs, suspicion gnawing at him. Something was off, too clean, too convenient. He called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Her desk sat untouched, her notes still scattered. By midnight, panic set in. She'd vanished. He stood at the window, rain blurring the city lights, and clenched his fists. Someone had framed her, and she was paying the price. But where had she gone? And how deep did this betrayal run? The answers were out there, lost in the storm, and he wouldn't stop until he found her. And the truth. Richard stood in the dim light of his office, the rain hammering against the glass like a relentless drum. Sophia's absence gnawed at him, her hurt words, "I don't belong here," looping in his mind. The suspension had been a gut punch, but the data didn't lie. Or did it? He sank into his chair, pulling up the corrupted files again. The report Daniel had shoved under his nose was airtight, Sophia's login, her timestamps, her supposed error glaring back at him. But something itched at the edges of his intuition, a dissonance he couldn't shake. He dug deeper, cross-referencing logs, tracing the changes. Hours bled into the night, coffee going cold, until a pattern emerged, subtle, buried, but undeniable. The alterations predated Sophia's access. Someone had planted this. His pulse quickened as he pulled security footage from the server room. There, at 2:17 a.m. 3 nights ago, was Daniel Pierce, slipping in, hunched over a terminal, his face taut with focus. Richard's jaw clenched. The bastard had framed her, turned her brilliance into a weapon against her. Fury surged, but beneath it, guilt twisted sharper. He'd let her walk away, wounded and alone. The next morning, the office buzzed with unease as Richard stormed in, Daniel's smug grin faltering at the sight of him. "Conference room. Now!" Richard barked, voice like steel. The execs filed in, sensing the storm. Daniel leaned against the table, arms crossed, until Richard slammed the evidence down. Screenshots, logs, the damning footage. "You doctored the data," Richard said, low and lethal. "You set her up." Daniel's mask slipped, a flicker of panic breaking through. "You're reaching, Richard. She's an intern. She screwed up." "Save it," Richard snapped, stepping closer. "You're done. Security's waiting. Get out." The room went still, Daniel's protests drowning under the weight of Richard's glare. He was escorted out, the door slamming shut on his career, but Richard's mind was already elsewhere. Sophia. He called her again. Voicemail. Her apartment was dark when he drove by, her landlord shrugging. "Haven't seen her since yesterday." Panic clawed at him. She'd vanished, and every second she slipped further away. He scoured her desk, finding a crumpled note, a bus ticket stub, dated today, headed out of the city. His heart sank. She was running, leaving everything behind, and he'd pushed her to it. The bus station loomed ahead, a gray sprawl under a bruised sky. Richard tore through the crowd, scanning faces, the clock ticking down. Her bus was boarding, last call echoing over the speakers. He spotted her at the edge of the platform, backpack slung over her shoulder, her head down as she stepped toward the door. "Sophia!" he shouted, voice raw, shoving past startled travelers. She froze, turning slowly, her eyes wide with shock. He reached her, breathless, rain streaking his face. "Don't go. You belong here, with me." She stared at him, hurt and hope warring in her gaze. "Why?" "Because you're the most brilliant person I've ever met," he said, stepping closer, voice breaking. "And because I care about you." Her breath hitched, the words sinking in. "You suspended me," she whispered, voice trembling. "I thought I failed you." "No," he said, desperate. "I failed you. Daniel framed you. I fired him. It's fixed. You're clear. Just come back, please." She looked down at the ticket in her hand, then back at him, rain blurring the edges of her world. "I don't know how to do this," she said softly. "Trust people. Belong." "Then start with me," he replied, holding out his hand. "We'll figure it out together." The bus engine roared, the driver calling her name. She hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down, leave or stay. Her fingers tightened on the ticket, then let it fall, fluttering to the wet ground. She took his hand, tentative but sure, and the tension in his chest unraveled. They stood there, rain-soaked and raw, a new beginning trembling between them as the bus pulled away without her. The rain-soaked bus station faded behind them as Richard drove Sophia back to the city, the hum of the engine filling the silence. She sat in the passenger seat, her damp clothes clinging to her, staring out the window at the blurred lights. Her hand rested on the armrest, inches from where his gripped the wheel, the unspoken weight of their moment hanging heavy. He'd caught her at the edge of leaving forever, and now, with her beside him, relief battled with a question he couldn't voice yet. What did she feel? He glanced at her, her profile sharp against the glass, and said, "You scared me back there." She turned slightly, eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. "I didn't think you'd come." "I had to," he said, voice low. "I couldn't let you go." She nodded, small and uncertain, and the rest of the drive passed in quiet. When they reached Blackwood Innovations, the building loomed dark and empty, the storm keeping even the night crew away. He led her inside, up to his office, where the city lights glowed beyond the rain-streaked windows. She sank onto the couch, exhaustion etched into her frame, and he handed her a towel from his gym bag. "You're staying here tonight," he said. "No arguments?" "I don't have anywhere else," she admitted, rubbing the towel over her hair. "Not anymore." "Then you're home," he replied, and the word felt bigger than he'd meant it to. The next morning, Sophia returned to her desk, the team's stares following her like shadows. Richard had briefed them. Daniel's betrayal, her innocence, the truth laid bare. Some nodded, relieved. Others, like Mark, stayed tight-lipped, their unease unspoken but clear. She didn't care. The Quantum Leap files waited, and she lost herself in them, her focus a shield against the noise. Richard watched from his office, the sight of her back at work easing a knot in his chest. He'd cleared her name, but the damage lingered, trust fractured, questions unanswered. He needed her to know she wasn't alone in this anymore. Days turned into weeks, and their rhythm shifted. Richard pulled her into meetings, not just as an intern but as a partner, her insights steering Quantum Leap toward its final stretch. They'd linger after hours, poring over data, the space between them shrinking. One night, as the office emptied, he found her at her desk, headphones off, staring at a screen of flawless code. "You did it," he said, leaning against the partition. "The prototype's ready." She looked up, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We did it." "No," he corrected, stepping closer. "You. I'd be lost without you." Her smile faltered, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said, voice steady. "Every word." She ducked her head, fingers tracing the edge of her keyboard, and he saw it, the struggle to process, to fit his words into her world. He didn't push, just stayed, letting the quiet build their bridge. Their bond deepened, subtle but unshakable. He'd bring her coffee when she forgot to eat, black with no sugar, the way she liked it. She'd leave notes on his desk, terse, brilliant breakdowns of systems he hadn't asked about, like gifts she didn't know how to give. They'd walk the city after dark, her beside him, the chaos muted by his presence. One evening, by the river, the lights dancing on the water, he stopped, turning to her. "You feel safe with me, don't you?" She nodded, slow and sure. "Yes. I don't know why, but yes." "Good," he said, a warmth spreading through him. "That's enough for now." But inside, something grew, feelings he couldn't name at first, sharp and urgent. He'd catch himself watching her, the way her brow creased in thought, the way her voice softened when she explained things only she could see. It hit him late one night, alone in his office, her latest report glowing on his screen. He didn't just admire her. He loved her. Messy, complicated, real. The realization shook him, a truth he couldn't bury. He waited for the right moment, nerves twisting as the days ticked by. It came on a quiet Friday, the office half empty, the sun dipping low. She sat across from him in his office, a tablet between them, dissecting the final quantum leap specs. He set it aside, hands clasping together, and took a breath. "Sophia, I need to tell you something." She looked up, alert but guarded. "What?" "I care about you," he said, the words tumbling out. "More than I should, maybe. More than just this." He gestured to the office, the project, everything. "I think I'm in love with you." Her eyes widened, breath catching. She sat back, hands curling into her lap, silence stretching taut. "Love is complicated for me," she said finally, voice small. "I don't feel things like that, not the way people expect." He leaned forward, gentle but firm. "Then let's figure it out together. No rules, no pressure, just us." She studied him, searching for something, safety, truth, a lifeline. "I don't know how," she admitted, raw and honest. "Neither do I," he said, a faint smile breaking through. "But I want to try with you." She didn't answer right away, her gaze dropping to her hands, then back to him. "Okay," she whispered, tentative but real, and his heart leapt, a fragile hope taking root. Their world shifted again, softer now, a dance of trust and discovery. She'd linger closer, her shoulder brushing his in meetings. He'd talk her through the chaos when it overwhelmed her, his voice her anchor. They'd sit on his office couch late into the night, sharing pieces of themselves. Her love for patterns, his fear of failing the empire he'd built. It wasn't conventional, but it was theirs, and it grew stronger with every step. Then the storm hit. The board called an emergency meeting, their faces grim across the polished table. Claire, now interim COO after Daniel's exit, led the charge, her voice clipped. "Richard, your focus on Sophia is a liability. The team's fractured, investors are nervous. She's brilliant, but she's an intern. Your favoritism's putting us at risk." "She's the reason we're ahead," he shot back, fists clenching under the table. "Quantum Leap wouldn't exist without her." "Maybe," an older board member, Grayson, cut in, his tone cold. "But perception matters. You're too close. Step back, or we'll vote you out." Richard's blood ran cold, the threat landing like a blow. "You'd tank the company over this?" "We'd save it," Claire said, unyielding. "Your choice." He stood, chair scraping loud, and stormed out, the ultimatum ringing in his ears. In his office, Sophia waited, oblivious, her laptop open to new data. He stopped, watching her, the weight of it crashing down, lose her or lose everything he'd built. She looked up, sensing the shift. "What's wrong?" "The board," he said, voice tight. "They want me to stop protecting you, or they'll remove me." Her face paled, hands stilling. "Because of me?" "No," he said, fierce. "Because of them. They don't see what I do." She stood, stepping closer, rare and bold. "What do you see?" "You," he said, raw and unguarded. "Everything you are. I'm not letting them take that away." The air crackled, their bond a lifeline against the chaos closing in. But as the board's deadline loomed, a question hung unanswered. Could he fight them and win, or would loving her cost him the empire he'd sworn to protect? The clock ticked on, the future teetering on a razor's edge. Richard stood by the window of his office, the city skyline a jagged blur against the dusk. The board's ultimatum pulsed in his mind: step back from Sophia or lose his role as CEO. His hands clenched at his sides, the weight of it unbearable. She sat on the couch behind him, her laptop glowing with the quiet hum of her work, oblivious to the storm brewing. Their bond had grown into something solid, a lifeline he couldn't let go of, even as it threatened to pull everything else apart. He turned, catching her eye, and she tilted her head, sensing the shift. "You're quiet," she said, voice soft but direct. "They're forcing a choice," he replied, crossing to her. "You or the company." Her fingers paused on the keys, eyes widening. "Me?" "Not you," he clarified, sitting beside her. "What you mean to me? They think I'm compromised." She frowned, processing. "Because you said, you love me?" "Yeah," he said, raw and unguarded. "And I meant it." She looked away, her hands curling into her lap. "Love is complicated for me," she said, the words halting. "I don't know how to feel it back. Not like that." He reached out, hesitating, then rested his hand near hers, not touching. "Then let's figure it out together," he said, soft but steady. "No rush. Just us." Her gaze flicked back to him, searching, and a small nod broke the tension. "Okay," she whispered, and the air shifted, fragile, hopeful, theirs. They sat there, the silence weaving them closer, a promise taking root. Weeks unfolded in a quiet dance. Sophia returned to her corner desk, her presence a steady pulse in the chaos of Blackwood innovations. Richard stood by her, deflecting the board's pressure with clipped updates and cold stares. They'd work late, her breaking down Quantum Leap's final hurdles, him marveling at her mind. One night, as rain tapped the windows, he leaned over her shoulder, watching her tweak a simulation. "You're relentless," he said, a grin tugging at his lips. "It's not done," she replied, focused. "It can be better." He chuckled, the sound warm. "You're gonna save us all, you know that?" She glanced up, a rare spark in her eyes. "Maybe." Their connection deepened, small gestures, shared looks, a rhythm no one else could touch. He'd shield her from the office noise, guiding her to his office when it overwhelmed her. She'd leave him notes, her blunt brilliance a gift he treasured. But the board's threat loomed, a shadow over every step. Claire pushed harder, her voice sharp in meetings. "You're risking everything for her, Richard. Step back, or we will." "I'd rather lose it all than lose her," he shot back, and the room went still, his words a line in the sand. Then, late one night, it came to a head. Sophia burst into his office, her laptop clutched tight, her face alight with something new. "I found it," she said, breathless. "A way to fix everything." He stood, drawn in. "Fix what?" "Quantum Leap, the energy grid, all of it." She set the laptop down, pulling up a model, complex, daring, a lattice of data and projections. "It's not just storage. It's distribution, self-regulating, adaptive. It could triple output, cut costs. It's bigger." He stared, the scope sinking in. This is revolutionary. It's not done, she said, already typing, but it can be. They worked through the night, her vision unfolding, his faith in her absolute. By dawn, they had a prototype, a blueprint that could redefine the industry. He looked at her, sleep-deprived but electric, and felt it again. Love, fierce and unshakable. "You're incredible," he said, voice low. She shrugged, shy. "It's just numbers." "No," he countered. "It's you." The board convened the next day, their faces grim, ready to vote him out. Claire stood, arms crossed. "Your time's up, Richard. We can't afford this distraction." "Then watch this," he said, nodding to Sophia. She stepped forward, nervous but steady, and projected her model onto the screen. Her voice trembled at first, then grew firm as she walked them through it. Every flaw in the current system, every leap her idea made possible. The room shifted, murmurs rising, eyes widening. Grayson, the oldest board member, leaned forward, squinting. "This is untested." "It works," Sophia said, simple and sure. "I ran the Sims. It's real." Claire frowned, skeptical. "An intern did this." "She's autistic," Grayson cut in, his tone clipped. Richard bristled, stepping beside her. "She's brilliant, and she just saved this company." The silence stretched, heavy with realization. Sophia stood there, exposed, her hands clasped tight. Grayson rubbed his chin, then nodded. "Run it live. If it holds, we reconsider." The test launched that afternoon, the office holding its breath as Sophia's system hummed to life. Screens glowed, data streaming, flawless, efficient, a marvel. The board watched, stunned as projections soared beyond anything they'd dreamed. Claire sat back, defeated. Grayson cracked a rare smile. "Well, damn," he muttered. After, in the conference room, the vote shifted. "You stay," Grayson said to Richard, firm. "And she's no intern anymore. Promote her." Richard exhaled, relief flooding him, but his eyes found Sophia across the room, her quiet triumph brighter than the victory. She'd done it, saved them, saved him, and the board saw it now. They'd underestimated her, and he'd never let them forget it. Later, in his office, they stood by the window, the city sprawling below. "You didn't have to fight for me," she said, voice soft. "Yeah, I did," he replied, turning to her, "and I'd do it again." She met his gaze, longer this time, and something settled. Trust, gratitude, a spark of something more. Claire's tight-lipped silence spoke volumes, but the victory was theirs. Quantum Leap wasn't just saved, it was transformed. Sophia's genius, the spark that redefined Blackwood Innovations. As the room emptied, Richard caught her eye, a grin breaking through. "You did it." "We did," she corrected, a faint flush on her cheeks. "It's done now." "Not even close," he said, softer. "This is just the start." The weeks that followed cemented her place. Her promotion to lead analyst came with a corner office, small, quiet, hers. She thrived, diving into new projects with a focus that left the team scrambling to keep up. Richard watched her reshape the company, her ideas rippling outward, and felt pride swell alongside something deeper. They'd faced the fire together, Daniel's betrayal, the board's threats, and come out stronger. Late nights became their domain, her desk a chaos of notes, his a steady anchor. One evening, as the city lights flickered beyond the glass, he leaned over her shoulder, studying a new energy model. "You're relentless," he said, voice warm. "It's not perfect yet," she replied, tweaking a line of code. "It can be better." He chuckled, resting a hand on the back of her chair. "You're gonna rewrite the world at this rate." She glanced up, a rare half-smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe." Their victory reshaped the company, but it was their bond that anchored it. Sophia's quiet brilliance became Blackwood's heartbeat, and Richard's faith in her its pulse. The board backed off, their trust earned, but the real shift was personal. Her trust in him grew, a steady thread weaving through their days. A year passed, marked by milestones. Quantum Leap launched to global acclaim, headlines praising the unknown genius behind it. Sophia hated the spotlight, but Richard shielded her, taking the press while she worked in peace. Their rhythm deepened. Coffee runs, late-night walks, moments where words weren't needed. He learned her language, the way she'd tilt her head when thinking, the soft hum she made when content. She learned his, the steady calm he brought, the way he'd fight for her without hesitation. One crisp autumn evening, a year after the board's turnaround, Richard stood in his office, a small box in his pocket. The city glowed orange below, leaves skittering across the streets. Sophia sat on the couch, a tablet in her lap, lost in a new project. He'd been planning this for weeks, wrestling with how to ask. Something big felt wrong, too loud for her. It had to be them, simple and true. He crossed to her, nerves buzzing, and sat beside her. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Put that down for a second." She blinked, setting the tablet aside. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he said, taking her hand. Her fingers tensed, then relaxed, a quiet trust in the gesture. "I've been thinking about us." Her brow furrowed, alert. "Us?" "Yeah." He paused, steadying himself. "This last year you've changed everything, the company, me. I don't want to do this without you. Ever." He pulled the box out, opening it to reveal a ring. Simple, silver, no flash. "I'm not asking for what everyone else does. No big party, no crowd, just you and me, whatever that looks like for you. Will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, then him, her breath shallow. "Marriage," she said, testing the word. "It's a system. Rules." "It can be our system," he replied, gentle but firm. "We make the rules. Together." Her eyes flicked between his, processing, a storm of thought he couldn't follow. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she said, blunt and sure, "but no big thing, just us." He grinned, relief flooding him, and slid the ring onto her finger. "Just us," he echoed, pulling her close. She leaned into him, tentative but real, her head resting against his chest, a quiet acceptance her way. The next months were a blur of quiet joy. They kept it private, no announcement, no fuss, just a shift in their world. She wore the ring, a subtle weight she'd trace with her thumb when lost in thought. He'd catch her doing it, a warmth spreading through him. They moved into his place, a sleek downtown loft where she carved out a corner for her work, screens and notes spilling across a desk he built her. Their life settled, a balance of chaos and calm, her diving into projects, him steering the company, always circling back to each other. One evening, as winter crept in, they sat on the couch, a rare night off. Snow dusted the windows, the city hushed beyond. Sophia shifted beside him, her usual focus replaced by something else. Restlessness, a tension he couldn't place. She set her mug down, hands clasping together, and turned to him. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice flat but edged. He straightened, alert. "What's up?" She took a breath, eyes locking on his. "We're having a baby." He froze, the words slamming into him. What?" "A baby," she repeated, blunt as ever. "I took a test. 2, actually. It's real." Shock gave way to a grin, wild and unrestrained. "Sophia, that's—" He laughed, pulling her into a hug she didn't resist. "That's incredible." She stayed stiff for a moment, then softened, her voice muffled against him. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he said, pulling back to meet her gaze. "But we'll figure it out, like always." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Okay." The moment hung, joy and uncertainty tangling together, a new chapter breaking wide open. But as he held her, a shadow flickered. How would the board take this? A CEO and his lead analyst, now a family. The company was theirs, but the world outside wouldn't stay quiet. What storms waited beyond this quiet night? The snow fell thicker, the future uncertain, their next fight already looming on the horizon. The loft glowed with the soft warmth of a winter evening, snow piling against the windows as Richard processed Sophia's words. "We're having a baby." His grin lingered, wild and uncontained, as he pulled her close, her body stiffening briefly before melting into him. "This is real?" he asked, voice thick with awe, needing to hear it again. "Yes," she said, blunt and steady, pulling back to meet his eyes. "I checked. Twice." He laughed, a sound that filled the room, and cupped her face gently. "We're gonna be parents. You and me." She nodded, her hand brushing the ring on her finger. A habit now, grounding her. "I don't know what that means yet," she admitted, voice soft but honest. "It's a lot." "We've got time," he said, his thumb tracing her cheek. "We'll take it slow. Together." Her lips quirked, a flicker of something like relief, and they settled back into the couch, the weight of it sinking in. The ring gleamed on her hand, their quiet engagement a promise now stretching into something bigger. They sat there, snow falling outside, the future unfurling in ways neither could fully grasp, joyful, daunting, theirs. Months rolled forward, the seasons shifting as Sophia's pregnancy reshaped their world. Spring brought a faint swell to her frame, her focus split between work and the new reality growing inside her. Richard proposed, simple, private, true to her. One evening in the loft, as cherry blossoms drifted past the windows, he knelt with a ring he'd chosen with care, plain silver, no stones, just her style. "Marry me," he said, voice low, "not for anyone else. For us." She studied him, the ring, the moment. "Yes," she said finally, direct and sure. "But no crowds. Just you." "Done," he replied, sliding it on, and they sealed it with a quiet kiss, her way, their way. Summer swelled with heat and change. Sophia returned to Blackwood Innovations, her corner office a sanctuary of screens and silence. The team adjusted, some with nods, others with sidelong glances, but her work, sharp, brilliant, shut down doubts. Richard stood by her, his pride a quiet force, but pregnancy brought new edges. Mornings left her pale, nausea hitting hard. The office noise, phones, voices, footsteps grew unbearable. She'd retreat to his office, headphones on, hands pressed to her temples. "It's louder now," she'd mutter, and he'd dim the lights, sit close, his presence a buffer. One afternoon, as July baked the city, she slumped at her desk, a hand on her stomach. Richard found her, concern flaring. "You okay?" "Too much," she said, voice tight. "The sound, the heat, everything." He guided her to his couch, fetching water. "Stay here, I've got you." She nodded, leaning into him, a rare surrender, and he felt it. Fierce protectiveness, a vow to shield her from the chaos. Work could wait. She couldn't. Fall arrived, her belly rounding, their bond tightening. They'd walk the loft at night, her pacing to ease the restlessness, him trailing with quiet questions. "How's it feel today?" She'd answer in fragments, heavy, strange, alive, and he'd listen, learning her through every shift. Blackwood thrived, her grid system now industry legend, but home was their core. Her desk, his coffee runs, their shared silence. Then came the twist. Daniel Pierce, the ghost of their past, resurfaced. Fired and disgraced, he'd festered in the shadows, his resentment a slow burn. Late October, as leaves clogged the streets, a leak hit, internal files twisted to paint Sophia's work as stolen, Richard's leadership as reckless. The press pounced, headlines screaming scandal. Richard found it on his desk, a memo from an anonymous source, Daniel's fingerprints all over it. "He's back," Richard said, voice low, showing Sophia the papers. She was 8 months along, fatigue lining her face, but her eyes sharpened. "Why now?" she asked, scanning the lies, her grid credited to a ghost team, her pregnancy spun as a distraction. "Because he's desperate," Richard replied, crumpling the page. "He wants us down." The board called an emergency meeting, Grayson's gravelly voice cutting through the tension. "This is a mess, Richard. Investors are spooked." "It's fake," Richard shot back, slamming the real data down. "Daniel's behind it. He's got nothing left but spite." Claire leaned forward, skeptical. "Prove it, or we're done." Sophia stood, slow but steady, her presence commanding despite her weariness. "I'll prove it," she said, voice firm. "Give me the system logs." She worked through the night, Richard at her side, her focus a blade cutting through Daniel's web. By dawn, she had it. Timestamps, IP trails, a digital confession of his sabotage. They presented it to the board, her voice unwavering as she dismantled the lies, her belly a quiet testament to her strength. "He hacked the archives," she said. "Changed dates, forged names. It's all here." Grayson nodded, impressed. "Good enough. We're clear." Richard turned to her, awe breaking through his fury. "You're unstoppable." She shrugged, tired but sure. "It was obvious." Daniel's final play crumbled, lawsuits filed, his name ruined for good. But the fight left scars. Back at the loft, Sophia sank onto the couch, hands on her stomach, breathing slow. Richard knelt beside her, his protectiveness a wall around them. "He's gone," he said. "For real this time." "Good," she replied, then winced, a hand pressing harder. "It's moving." He grinned, resting his hand over hers, feeling the kick. "Strong, like you." She met his gaze, a rare softness there. "Like us." Their love stood firm, unshakable against the storm, but as winter loomed, a new challenge waited. The baby, their future, a world they'd face together, no matter what came next. The loft was a cocoon of tension and quiet as fall bled into winter, Sophia's pregnancy reaching its final stretch. The air carried a chill, frost creeping across the windows, mirroring the strain etched into her frame. At 8 months, her belly was a pronounced curve, her steps slower, her focus split between the life inside her and the chaos Daniel had unleashed. Richard hovered close, his protectiveness a tangible force, bringing her tea when she worked late, guiding her to the couch when the office noise overwhelmed her. "You're pushing too hard," he'd say, voice gentle but firm, and she'd nod, leaning into him, a rare concession. The aftermath of Daniel's sabotage lingered like smoke. The leaked files, twisted to discredit Sophia's genius and Richard's leadership, had rattled Blackwood Innovations, but her relentless unraveling of his lies had crushed it. She'd sat beside Richard in the boardroom, 8 months pregnant and unyielding, presenting the proof. Hacked logs, forged signatures, a trail leading straight to Daniel. Grayson's gruff approval, good enough, had sealed it, and legal action buried Daniel for good. But the victory was bittersweet. The press still buzzed, and Sophia's exhaustion deepened. One evening, as snow dusted the city, she winced mid-sentence, a hand flying to her side. Richard was there in an instant, alarm flaring. "What's wrong?" "It's tight," she said, breathing shallow. "Not time yet, but close." He guided her to bed, his hand steady on hers. "Rest. I've got this." She didn't argue, a sign of how much she trusted him, and he stayed awake watching her sleep, the weight of their future pressing in. Days later, Daniel's final blow landed, a desperate, sloppy hack attempt on the grid system, intercepted by Sophia's fail-safes. She caught it from her laptop at home, her voice sharp over the phone to Richard. "He's trying again. It's him." "Stay put," he said, already heading to the office. "I'll handle it." He rallied the team, traced the breach, and shut it down, fury fueling him. By morning, Daniel was in custody, his last gasp extinguished. Richard returned to the loft, finding Sophia at her desk, calm but pale. "It's over," he said, kneeling beside her. "He's gone." "Good," she replied, a hand on her belly. "I'm tired." He pulled her close, her head resting against his shoulder. "You're the strongest person I know." She didn't respond, but her fingers tightened on his, their bond a fortress against the world. They stood together, unshaken, ready for what came next. Winter deepened, and January brought the turning point. Sophia woke before dawn, a sharp pain cutting through her sleep. "Richard," she gasped, gripping his arm. "It's now." He bolted upright, adrenaline surging. Okay. Hospital. Let's go." He grabbed the pre-packed bag, his hands steady despite the panic, and helped her into the car. The streets were quiet, snow falling thick as he drove, her breathing ragged beside him. "You're doing great," he said, voice a lifeline. "Just hold on." She nodded, teeth gritted, and they reached the hospital as the sky lightened. Nurses whisked her away, Richard at her side, his hand never leaving hers. Hours stretched, pain, fear, her quiet strength shining through. "I can't," she whispered once, sweat beading on her brow. "You can," he said, fierce and soft. "You've got this. I'm right here." She pushed, her resolve a force, and at 9:47 a.m. a cry pierced the room. A baby boy, tiny and perfect, handed to her trembling arms. Richard's breath caught, tears blurring his vision as he leaned over them. "He's ours," he said, voice breaking. Sophia looked down, exhaustion giving way to wonder. "Yeah," she said, soft and sure. "Ours." They named him Elias, simple, strong, a nod to her love of patterns and his hope for the future. The hospital room became their world, Richard cradling Elias while Sophia rested, his devotion instant and absolute. He'd change diapers with fumbling care, sing off-key lullabies, his eyes never straying far from them. "You're a natural," a nurse teased, and he grinned unashamed. "Had a good teacher," he said, nodding at Sophia, who watched with a quiet smile. Weeks turned to months, spring thawing the city as they settled into parenthood. The loft adapted, crib in the corner, toys scattered, Sophia's desk still a hub of brilliance. She returned to work part-time, Elias in a carrier against her chest, her focus unshaken. Richard juggled CEO duties and fatherhood, rushing home to take him off her hands, his love for them a steady flame. Blackwood thrived, the grid a global marvel, but home was where they shone. Elias's first laugh, Sophia's rare, unguarded joy, Richard's quiet awe. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms fell outside, Richard sat on the floor, Elias gurgling in his lap. Sophia joined them, her ring catching the light, and he looked up, a story spilling out. "Hey, little man," he said, smiling at their son. "Your mom? She's the reason I believe in miracles." Elias cooed, tiny hands grabbing at his shirt, and Sophia tilted her head, curious. "Miracles?" "Yeah," Richard said, voice warm. "You walked into my life, turned it upside down, and gave me this." He nodded at Elias, then her. "That's a miracle." She paused, processing, then said softly, "You were my first." He turned, brow lifting. "First what?" "First home," she replied, simple and raw, her hand finding his. He squeezed it, emotion swelling, and pulled her close, Elias between them. "You're mine too," he said, voice thick. "Always." The moment held, a perfect circle, her genius, his heart, their son tying it all together. Outside, the city hummed, the world spinning on. But here, in their quiet loft, it was just them. A beautiful ending, a family forged in fire and love, forever changed by the woman who saw patterns where no one else could. My beautiful story, family. What's the most unexpected love story you've ever heard? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. Thank you for sticking with me. See you in the next story.